Russia is not happy that Germany will be hosting hypersonic missiles in the coming future. And I know this is probably one of those news stories. Wait, when did this happen? I know it's been a week where there's been so many news stories that there's a lot of things falling through the cracks. So many great things for Ukraine, but a lot of things that Russia is not happy about. I mean, they're not happy about Germany and obviously them getting those weapons by 2026. They're not happy about the Biden comments that were made. Biden made comments about Putin, and they're not happy with that. We're finding out also that today Lukashenko is pulling back all of his troops from the border with Ukraine, which is interesting. We have to break that down a little bit, and we need to break down the biggest story, and that is we're finding out from Ukraine's intelligence chief that Russia will strike again from the north, though he didn't really go in much detail. So I figured let's break down these stories because, once again, these are things that you may have missed because it's been a week of a lot of news. Starting off with the Kremlin not being happy about Germany getting hypersonic missiles. And yes, you may have missed this, but on July 10th, which was during the NATO summit, Washington announced that Germany will host SM-6 and Tomahawk missiles, as well as hypersonic missiles on their bases by 2026. So about a year and a half. Russia's not happy about this because some of their missiles can hit 2,600 kilometers. Those are the kind of missiles that Ukraine has been asking for so that they can strike deeper and deeper into Russia. Obviously, that is still a no-go, and firing deeper into Russia with the current stuff is still a no-go. But Germany has either asked for this or they are partnering up with Washington to be like, hey, we need a bigger deterrent here. And well, I guess Russia is threatened by that because the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry, who we've talked about so many times, did an interview today saying that there will be victims if this were to happen, meaning victims to European capitals, which is kind of interesting. And I'm really not quite sure why he feels that way. Am I right? He says, quote, "Our country is in the crosshairs of American missiles located in Europe. We've been through all of this before, and that we have enough potential to deter these missiles, but the capitals of these states are potential victims." Yeah, he is calling out the capitals of Europe. So if they were to get these missiles, there'd be victims in those capitals. That is a straight-up threat. A straight-up threat which should only encourage more and more countries to be like, hey, U.S., they're making more threats over here. Could you send us some of those Tomahawks? We would like them as well. I don't think Russia realizes that. Every time they make a stupid comment like that, other countries go, yo, we need to protect ourselves. What can we do here, U.S.? Can we do something here? I mean, that's why a couple other countries joined NATO, because they were scared of Russia. Kind of going back to the 1960s, 70s, 80s, wondering what Russia's going to do so and protect us. Instead of, going back into history, countries are saying we're joining alliances so that we can protect ourselves. And we have Dmitry kind of commenting on that a little bit, saying that Europe is bursting at the seams and that history will repeat itself. And that's in response to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So I'm really kind of confused on what points he's trying to make here. Because he was referencing the Cold War when the US missiles were in Europe and were aimed at the Soviet Union. But at the end of the day, yeah, sure, there were threats back and forth, but Russia wound up losing in all of that because what did they do? They spent all their money on weapons and the country went broke. So yeah, I guess in a way, this could be the Soviet Union. In the sense that you guys spent so much money on these things, you couldn't support your own system, which led to a collapse. And in a way, I think that's what the world wants right now, for Russia to collapse completely so they cannot afford weapons to attack other countries, and then from there moving forward, put a peace plan together so that Russia can never do this again moving forward. Which is funny because Biden actually called out the Soviet Union and the early NATO days by saying, for those who thought NATO's time had passed, they've got a rude awakening when Putin invaded Ukraine. Adding that, quote, some of the oldest and deepest fears in Europe roared back to life because once again, a murderous madman was on the march. Yes, that is Biden making references of Hitler and Putin together. So you could see where, Russia right now feels threatened because the United States is once again calling them out for what they're doing. They're doing exactly what happened during World War II with the Mustache Man. Now, obviously, Russia was going to fire back on those comments, and Dmitry, once again, coming out and making his statement saying, this is something that we pay direct attention to, and something that is obviously unaccepted to us, adding, we continue to consider it absolutely unacceptable behavior for a head of state to make such disrespectful remarks about other heads of states. Really? Okay, so here's the deal. You run your own country. You tell your country leaders and military leaders to go attack citizens and a lot of critical infrastructure that is not supposed to be attacked, such as a children's hospital. But we're not supposed to call you out on that? Like, you did that purposely, right? You did that purposely, attacking dams and other really important things that you're not supposed to do, and we're not supposed to call you out on it? Oh, and then you make demands to other countries and say, I want it my way, even though you're breaking every war crime ever written, and then you're doing it at the same time while demanding all of these things in its place. It doesn't work that way, Russia. And I think we've had this conversation before. You can't keep demanding things when you're not winning on the battlefield. You can't keep demanding things when you're attacking children who already have a really hard life because they're going through cancer. It doesn't work that way, my friend. And clearly, there is no negotiations that are going to be happening between Russia and Ukraine because just recently, Russian leaders, actually the former president of Russia, came forward and just said, we wouldn't stop there. Even if a peace agreement were to come out, we wouldn't stop there, which means Russia has zero intentions anytime in the near future to do anything. And unfortunately or fortunately, whatever way you look at it, the only way you're going to get Russia to do what they need to do right, what the world is telling them to do, is that you need to just smack the big angles out of them until they're finally seduced to the point to where it's like, look, you're losing in every front. You have to give up. And the problem we have here is that we're going back to our original statement about history repeating itself. Putin, for some reason, is in this mindset of the, Soviet Union days. And history will repeat itself. Whether it's the history of what happened with the Mustache Man or the history of what happened with the Soviet Union at that time. It's going to repeat itself. And in every history book, the bad guy does not win. And I don't know if Putin is just purposely doing this even more because he knows that and he doesn't want to, doesn't want to give up that dream, or if people are just lying to him so much that it just doesn't even make, he doesn't even cross his mind that he's losing. And so that's why you're going to get comments like this, and obviously Putin's not going to like this. He doesn't like that Europe is going to get more weapons, and of course they're going to throw in Soviet Union kind of mentality. But remember, the Soviet Union fell apart because they were spending so much money on weapons, and what's happening in Russia right now? They're raising taxes to spend money on weapons, money they don't have. Ukraine is taking out their oil fields, so it's squeezing Russia even more. Ukrainians are destroying a lot of very expensive stuff, which means Russia has to spend more money. And there's even more and more sanctions being put on Russia and China, which is going to make everything a lot more expensive. So if we have to dry Russia out by making them spend all their capital on things that they could never use down the line, then let's let them do it. Let them do the trades with North Korea because North Korean weapons don't work. We've seen photos of that, how the howitzers just kind of go boom because Russia told all their troops not to double check the weapons anymore because that wastes too much time and we need to keep pushing forward. At the same time, Ukraine's getting more and more support from around the world, getting F-16s, and hopefully soon we'll be allowed to strike deeper and deeper into Russia. Because if we could take out where these Russians are launching these, whether they're aircraft or missiles, whatever, if we could stop this at the source, then Ukraine won't need as many air defense systems, which could be cheaper down the line for the rest of the world, or Ukraine could use that extra money flow to purchase other weapons that could be needed more on the battlefield, maybe more HIMARS, for example, more ATACMS. Maybe they could purchase Storm Shadows and things like that, and maybe even Tauruses, because Germany at this rate, who knows, if they're willing to host hypersonic missiles, we might be getting to the point to where they might be okay with giving Tauruses to Ukraine. We don't know. It is definitely a weird situation out there, and things only get weirder, because today, Lukashenko announced that they're going to be pulling back all of their troops that are on the border with Ukraine back to their main bases. And you're probably saying, wait a minute, what? That makes no sense. Well, according to him, quote, after we took action, the Ukrainians withdrew their armed forces and additional troops from our border and overall from the Belarus-Ukraine border area. Right now, we don't have any tensions with the Ukrainians, and I hope there won't be any going forward. That being said, he's moving those troops back. Why? It makes no sense to me because we know that Lukashenko is Putin's puppet, and he'll do whatever Putin tells him to do, especially how many weapons he has on his own land that Putin said, you're going to put nuclear weapons here, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And Lukashenko just said, okay, sure thing, Putin daddy, I'll do whatever you need to. And now he's doing that, which makes people a lot confused because what was announced just after that? Because Ukraine's intelligence chief came forward and said that there will be an offensive from the Russians from the north. He was asked about that, and he said, quote, if I start answering that question of where the attack will be, will only provoke panic. Let's just say there are problems, and they're going to tend to get worse. This has definitely opened up questions such as, north of what? We're talking about north of Kyiv? Is it coming from Belarus? And Lukashenko's announcement was an announcement just to kind of pull back and Russia just do the thing that they like to do, which is invade? Or is it coming from just north of Kharkiv, maybe Sumy region? Is it going to be the Russians coming in from there? We don't know. He's not telling us because he doesn't want to cause panic, which I think in a way is going to cause more panic. I don't know. And there are definitely a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that you and I will never know, at least until they happen. And it's no secret that there's going to be a book one day written talking about all this stuff. I just can't wait to that day where I can read that book because there's going to be so many answers to my questions. Like, for example, at least in this right now, obviously we'll know about this in a few weeks or months. Are they coming from the Sumy region? Because we knew that Russia was already building up a bunch of different kind of units over there. I think tens of thousands of them. And then they had to move those troops down because Ukrainians were able to stop them from entering Kharkiv region. A lot of good questions that I don't have answers to. And those are just some of the headlines that we have coming out right now. There's a lot more that is happening. On my TikTok channel, weirdly enough, a lot of my videos for the past few days have been removed, and because of that, we're stuck in that weird 3,000 view count, regardless of the story. So not really quite sure what's going on there, which is why I make longer video, at least the longer form videos here on YouTube, for you to at least go through some of the stories. There are a lot more stories that we hadn't talked about. Like, we finally had Zelenskyy talking about what happened with Biden. As you know, Biden mistakenly called Zelenskyy Putin, saying, the president of Ukraine, Putin. And Zelenskyy, during an interview, he was actually flying back from the United States. He made a stop in Ireland. And Zelenskyy says, look, the United States had done a lot for Ukraine, so we can forget this mistake happened. Which is, Zelenskyy's a leader. He's really great at what he does. You have to admit. Anyway, that being said, hopefully you can start seeing my videos again on TikTok. Hopefully they took me out of that shadow ban. But I want to thank you for joining me. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and give this video a thumbs up. I'm Joey. Stay safe.